You know, they say money can't buy happiness, but in Texas, it can buy a 600 horsepower masterpiece that makes every hater in your life lose their mind. My name is Sarah Collins, and I learned the hard way that when you finally make it, the first person to try and pull you down is usually the one who shares your last name. Seriously, Sarah? A Ferrari? You look like you're trying too hard to prove you're not just a lonely warehouse manager anymore. That was the first thing my younger brother, Jake, said to me when he saw my new car. Not congratulations, not I'm proud of you, just a jagged little insult wrapped in a fake laugh. We were standing in the parking lot of an upscale steakhouse in North Dallas. The heat was radiating off the black asphalt at 105 degrees, making the Rosso Corsa red paint on my brand new Ferrari Roma look like it was glowing. I've spent 15 years building my logistics company from a single van to a statewide fleet. This car wasn't just a toy to me, it was the trophy for every 80-hour work week I'd survived. My dad, Robert, walked up and whistled. She's a beauty, Sarah. I know how much you put into this. But my mother was already looking at Jake, checking his temperature. She spent 30 years making sure my brother never feels less than, even though he's 28, unemployed, and currently living off her loans. It's very bright, isn't it? My mother said, her voice strained. Jake, honey, don't you think it's a bit much for Dallas? Jake smirked, leaning against his dirty SUV. It's tacky, Mom. But hey, if Sarah needs to spend 200 grand to feel special, let her. I'd rather invest that in a real business, like the tech startup I'm planning. I didn't say a word. I just locked the car and led them inside. Lunch was an hour and a half of pure misery. Jake spent the entire meal lecturing me on financial responsibility, while he ordered the most expensive ribeye on the menu and waited for Dad to pull out his credit card. I just sat there, sipping my iced tea, letting his words slide off me. I've learned that when you have the bank account, you don't need the last word. But when we walked back out into that blinding Texas sun, the world stopped spinning. I saw it from 20 feet away. A long, jagged, white scar was sliced right through the driver's side door. It started at the headlight and tore all the way back to the rear fender. It wasn't a door ding. It wasn't a mistake. Someone had taken a key or a screwdriver and put their entire weight into ruining my car. My stomach did a slow, nauseating flip. That paint job alone cost more than Jake's entire education. Oh, my heavens! My mother shrieked, clutching her chest. Sarah! Look at your beautiful car. Who would do such a thing? I felt the blood drain from my face. I knelt down, looking at the raw metal showing through the red. My heart was pounding in my ears. Whoa! Jake shouted, his voice sounding way too energetic. See? I told you, Sarah. This city is full of envious people. You flaunt a car like this in a public lot, and you're just asking for some lowlife to humble you. He stepped closer, shaking his head with a look of fake sympathy that made my skin crawl. Suddenly, he pointed a finger toward a family walking toward a minivan a few rows down. A young mom was struggling with two toddlers. One of them was dragging a plastic toy truck along the ground. Look at that kid. Jake whispered loudly. I bet you anything it was him. I saw those kids running around near your car when we arrived. Look at that toy truck, it's got metal wheels. Sarah, you better go grab that woman before she drives off. That brat just cost you $30,000. My mother gasped, Robert, do something. Don't let them get away. Jake was frantic, pushing me to go confront a stranger and her crying toddler. He was so helpful, so outraged on my behalf. He thought he'd found the perfect scapegoat. He thought he'd destroyed the one thing I was proud of and walked away clean. But as I stood up, I didn't look at the fleeing family. I looked at the small, blue LED light blinking on my dashboard. My Ferrari has a 360-degree Sentry Mode. It records everything that comes within 3 feet of the sensors. And as I glanced at Jake's hand, I saw a tiny, red paint flake caught under his thumbnail. Jake was ready to let a toddler take the fall, but my car had already caught its real attacker in 4K. Hey, stop right there. Jake's voice boomed across the parking lot, echoing off the concrete walls of the nearby department store. The young mother, who was just trying to buckle her toddler into a car seat, jumped nearly a foot in the air. She looked around, confused and terrified, as my brother marched toward her like he was a sheriff in a bad western. Your kid just keyed my sister's Ferrari. Look at this damage. You think you can just let your brat run wild and then sneak away? A few people heading to their cars stopped to watch. In Texas, a public confrontation is basically free entertainment, and within seconds, a small circle of bystanders had formed. The heat was stifling, making everyone's temper shorter than usual. The young woman's face went pale. What? No, my son was right next to me the whole time. He didn't do anything, she stammered, her voice shaking. But Jake wasn't having it. He was performing now, playing the role of the protective brother to perfection. I saw him. He was dragging that toy truck right against the paint. This is a $250,000 car, lady. Do you have any idea what you've just done? My mother rushed over to join him, her heels clicking sharply on the asphalt. It's true, I saw them playing near the car earlier, she added, her voice high and accusatory. She hadn't seen anything of the sort, but if Jake said it, it was gospel to her. She looked at the crowd, seeking validation. Some people just don't teach their children respect. My daughter worked so hard for this, and now it's ruined because of sheer negligence. The crowd started whispering, casting dirty looks at the poor woman. I heard a man in a cowboy hat mutter something about parenting these days. The narrative was set. Jake was the hero, the mother was the villain, and the kid was the criminal. I stood by the driver's side door, my hand resting near the jagged scar on the metal. I remained absolutely silent. I didn't yell. I didn't join the fray. I just watched my brother. He was sweating, his eyes darting around, looking for more people to pull into his lie. He looked so sure of himself, so triumphant. He thought that by creating this massive scene, he could bury the truth under a mountain of noise. My father, Robert, stood a few feet away from me, his hands deep in his pockets. He looked pained, his eyes fixed on the ground. He knew how Jake was, but the habit of staying quiet for the sake of family peace was a hard one to break. He looked at me for a split second, a silent plea for me to do something, but I just gave him a cold, blank stare. Sarah, say something. Jake yelled back at me, gesturing wildly. Tell her you're calling the cops. Tell her she's not leaving until we get her insurance info. The young mother started to cry, her toddlers wailing in the backseat, overwhelmed by the shouting. It was a pathetic sight, a grown man bullying a woman and her children over a lie he had manufactured to cover his own tracks. Jake's jealousy had reached a point where he was willing to ruin a stranger's life just to feel like he had won against me. He wanted to see me upset, he wanted to see me frantic, but most of all, he wanted to be the one in control of the situation. I'm calling the police right now, my mother declared, pulling her phone out of her designer bag. This is property damage. This is a crime. The crowd nodded in agreement. The young mother was sobbing now, clutching her son's toy truck like it was a piece of evidence in a murder trial. Please, she begged. We were just going to the mall. He's only 3. He wouldn't know how to do that. Jake stepped into her personal space, his face red from the heat and the excitement. Save it for the judge, lady. You're lucky my sister hasn't lost her mind on you yet. I finally walked toward them, my footsteps slow and deliberate. The crowd parted for me. They expected me to scream, to demand payment, to fulfill the angry Ferrari owner stereotype Jake had built for me. I stopped right in front of the young mother. She looked at me with pure terror in her eyes. I didn't look at her, though. I looked straight at Jake. He gave me a thumbs up, a sick grin spreading across his face. He thought we were on the same team. He thought he had successfully handed me a scapegoat on a silver platter. Just as my mother was about to hit the call button, a man in a bright neon vest and a radio clipped to his belt pushed through the crowd. It was the mall security manager. He looked at the crying woman, then at the Ferrari, then at Jake, who was still mid-rant. He held up a hand to quiet the noise. All right, everyone, settle down. I heard the shouting from the dispatch office. What seems to be the problem here? Jake didn't even let him finish before he started barking. This kid keyed the Ferrari. We need the police and we need this lot locked down. The security manager wiped sweat from his brow and looked at me, then back at the Ferrari. He didn't look as convinced as the crowd. He looked like a man who had seen 1,000 parking lot disputes in his time. He tapped his radio and spoke into it quietly for a moment before turning back to us. Listen, there's no need for all this yelling. This is a high-security zone for the luxury shops. We don't just rely on what people say they saw. Every square inch of this premium lot is covered by high-definition 4K thermal cameras, and they've been rolling since before you even arrived. Jake's grin didn't just fade, it evaporated. He suddenly looked like he was having trouble breathing in the Texas humidity. The silence that followed the security manager's mention of cameras was heavy, but for me, it was a familiar weight. Standing there in the sweltering heat, watching Jake's eyes dart around like a trapped animal, I wasn't just thinking about the car. I was thinking about the last 20 years of our lives in this house. This wasn't a one-time thing, it was a Texas family tradition. In the Collins household, there was a silent rule: Sarah builds, and Jake breaks. And when Jake breaks something, everyone else has to help him hide the pieces so he doesn't feel bad about himself. I remembered my 16th birthday. I had saved up every penny from mowing lawns in the neighborhood to buy a beat-up old truck. I spent 6 months under that hood, my hands covered in grease, learning how to make it run. 2 weeks after I got it on the road, Jake, who was only 12 then, decided he wanted to drive it while I was at work. He shifted it into neutral, and it rolled right down the driveway into a neighbor's brick wall. My mother didn't scold him. She didn't even make him apologize. Instead, she looked at me and said, "Sarah, you shouldn't have left the keys where a curious boy could find them. You know how he is. Don't make him feel guilty for an accident." That was the pattern. Whether it was at the dinner table over plates of brisket and potato salad, or at the big malls in Houston during school shopping, the story was always the same. If I got an A, it was expected because I was the strong one. If Jake barely passed, we went out for ice cream to encourage his potential. If I worked a double shift at the warehouse to pay my way through college, I was being obsessive. If Jake dropped out of his 3rd semester, he was just finding his soul. My father would sit at the head of the table, cutting his steak in silence, eyes down, while my mother fueled Jake's delusions of grandeur. "It's not his fault the world is so competitive, Sarah," she'd say whenever I tried to hold him accountable. "He has a sensitive heart. Not everyone is as cold and calculated as you." Cold. Calculated. That's what they called my ambition. That's what they called the grit it took to build a company from the ground up while my brother was busy networking at bars on their dime. Even today, at that expensive steakhouse, the dynamic hadn't changed. Jake had ordered a $60 steak and 3 appetizers, then spent the entire meal mocking my car. He couldn't stand that I had something he couldn't charm or manipulate his way into. He couldn't stand that the Ferrari was a symbol of a world he couldn't enter without me opening the door. I looked at him now, standing by the security manager. He was trying to regain his footing, his face pale under his Texas tan. "Well, good," Jake stammered, his voice cracking. "Cameras are great. They'll show exactly what that kid did." "Right, Mom? It'll just confirm everything I saw." My mother nodded fervently, clutching Jake's arm. "Exactly. We want to see the footage. We want to see justice for Sarah's car." She actually thought she was being supportive. She truly believed she was protecting me, but in reality, she was just following the script. Protect Jake at all costs, even if it means destroying a stranger's reputation. My father finally stepped closer to me. He leaned in, his voice a low rumble that only I could hear. "Sarah, maybe we should just go. I'll pay for the repair. Let's not make this a whole big thing in public." I looked at him, the man who taught me how to change my own oil but never taught me how to stand up to my own mother. He wanted to buy silence. He wanted to bury the truth under a checkbook so we could go back to pretend harmony. "No, Dad," I said, my voice as flat as the horizon on a West Texas highway. "Justice is a big thing. We're staying." The security manager started walking toward the mall entrance, gesturing for us to follow. "The office is just inside, through the service hall. We can review the angles from the last 2 hours. It won't take long to find your car." Jake was lagging behind, dragging his feet. He was sweating through his polo shirt now, his bravado leaking out of him like air from a punctured tire. He kept looking back at the Ferrari, his eyes lingering on the dashboard. He still didn't get it. He was worried about the mall's cameras, which were 50 feet away and mounted high on a pole. He was thinking about angles and shadows. He had no idea that the most damning evidence wasn't on a building. It was sitting 6 inches away from where his hand had been. He didn't know that my Ferrari has its own eyes, 6 high-definition lenses that don't care about family loyalty or sensitive hearts. As we entered the cool, air-conditioned hallway of the mall, I reached into my bag and felt the weight of my smartphone. I knew exactly what was on it. I had received the notification on my watch the moment the sensors were tripped, but I hadn't opened the file yet. I wanted to see his face when the truth was projected on a 50-inch monitor for everyone to see. "Wait until we get to the office," I said quietly as we approached the heavy steel door of the security suite. "The mall cameras are good, but I have something even better." "You guys are really making a mountain out of a molehill," Jake muttered as we walked down the sterile, white-tiled hallway toward the security suite. He was trying to sound annoyed, like we were wasting his valuable time, but his voice was an octave higher than usual. "I mean, it's just a car, Sarah. A little paint, a little buffing. Why involve the mall suits? We should be at home having dessert." My mother squeezed his arm, her eyes fixed on the security manager's back. "Don't listen to him, Sarah. Jake is just trying to keep us from being stressed. He's always been so considerate of everyone's feelings." I didn't even look at them. I pulled out my phone and dialed my insurance company's premium concierge line. In Texas, when you own a vehicle that costs more than most people's homes, you don't call a 1-800 number and wait on hold. You have a dedicated agent. He picked up on the second ring. "Sarah, everything okay?" I kept my voice perfectly level, the same tone I use when I'm negotiating a multimillion-dollar shipping contract. "I've had a significant vandalism event in a parking lot. Professional keying, deep into the primer. I'm at the mall security office now. I need an adjuster assigned immediately and a flatbed sent to this location. The car isn't being driven until it's inspected." Behind me, I heard Jake let out a sharp, jagged breath. "A flatbed? Sarah, don't be so dramatic. It's a scratch, not an engine failure." I ignored him and continued talking to the agent, providing the VIN and the exact location. I could feel my mother's disapproval radiating off her. To her, my calmness was coldness. She wanted me to be hysterical so she could comfort me, or better yet, so Jake could be the one to rescue the situation. My silence was denying them both the roles they wanted to play. I finished the call and tucked the phone away, staring straight ahead as we entered the security hub. The security office was a cramped, windowless room filled with glowing monitors, the low hum of cooling fans, and the faint, dusty smell of old electronics. The security manager sat down at a central console and began typing, his fingers clicking rhythmically. "Okay, we've got the North Premium lot, camera 14 and 16. Let's wind it back to 1 p.m. He paused, looking over his shoulder at us. "Just so you know, our cameras are great for identifying cars and general movements, but at this distance, with the Texas sun glare off the asphalt, faces can be tricky. It's not CSI, it's just mall surveillance." Jake's posture immediately improved. He straightened his shoulders, a bit of that old, smug light returning to his eyes. He leaned over the manager's shoulder, acting like he was an expert in forensic evidence. "See? I told you. Those kids were probably wearing hats or something. It's going to be hard to prove anything from way up there. It's a dead end, Sarah." He turned to my father, looking for an ally. "Dad, tell her. We're just harassing that poor family for no reason now. We should just let it go. I'll even help you find a local shop to fix it for cheap. My buddy runs a body shop in Plano, he'll do it for a few $100 under the table." My father sighed, looking at the monitors with a weary expression. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else, at home, in his garden, or back at his quiet office. "Let's just see what the man finds, Jake. Sarah has a right to know who did it." My mother, however, was already nodding along with Jake. "His right, Sarah. Why are we being so litigious? It's embarrassing to stand here and watch tapes like we're the police. We're family. We should be celebrating, not investigating." Wait, the security manager said, squinting at the screen. "I see a group walking toward the entrance at 1:05 p.m. Is that you folks?" We all leaned in. On the screen, 4 tiny figures walked toward the restaurant. The quality was grainy, the heat haze making the figures shimmer. Jake stayed behind for a second, leaning against the car while the rest of us moved toward the shade. I was tying my shoe. Jake shouted before anyone could even ask. "Remember, Mom? I told you my laces were loose. I was just adjusting my sneaker. That's all that was." He was lying harder now, his words coming out in a frantic rush. He started pacing the small room, his hands gesturing wildly, trying to build a wall of noise before the camera could show anything else. And look. See those shadows over there? Near the minivan? That has to be the kids. They must have looped around the back while we were inside. I'm telling you, I saw them. I have a sixth sense for this stuff. Sarah, you're looking at the wrong footage. You're letting the real criminals get away because you're obsessed with being right. He was sweating profusely now, the grey polo shirt he was wearing showing dark patches under his arms. He looked frantic, like a man trying to hold back a flood with a paper towel. He thought the blurriness of the mall's 50-foot-high camera was his shield. He thought as long as he kept talking, as long as he kept accusing that innocent child with the toy truck, he could stay the protective brother who was just trying to help his unstable sister. I stood in the back of the room, my arms crossed, watching his performance with a clinical detachment. I hadn't mentioned the Ferrari's internal system yet. I wanted the insurance company to hear the mall's official report first. I wanted the paper trail to be massive. I wanted every single expert to confirm the damage before I revealed the who. I wanted Jake to commit so deeply to his lie that there would be no way for my mother to claim it was an accident or a misunderstanding later. The mall cameras are a bit far, I finally said, my voice cutting through his frantic rambling like a sharp blade. And you're right, Jake. The glare is pretty bad. It's hard to see exactly what's happening at waist level from that angle. Jake let out a huge sigh of relief, his shoulders dropping. Exactly. Finally, you're seeing sense. Let's just go home, Sarah. I'll buy you a drink. I looked him dead in the eye, a cold smile touching my lips. But don't worry. My car doesn't have a glare problem. It has Sentry Mode. It has 6 4K cameras, including one hidden right in the door pillar, less than 12 inches from where the scratch started. It doesn't just record video, it records audio too. It captures the exact sound of the metal being torn. The room went so quiet you could hear the hum of the servers. Jake's hand, which had been pointing at the monitor, froze in midair. He turned to me, his face turning a sickly shade of grey that even the dim light of the security room couldn't hide. He realized, in that silent moment, that the car hadn't just been a target, it had been a witness. Sarah, for the love of everything, just stop. Jake's voice cracked, and he actually stomped his foot on the sterile tile floor. He wasn't acting like a protective brother anymore. He was acting like a cornered animal. You're being so weird about this. It's a car. It's just metal and paint. You're standing here in a security office like you're the FBI, and for what? To humiliate some random family? To make mom cry on her weekend? He stepped into my personal space, his breath smelling of the expensive steak I had just paid for. Just drop it. Delete the footage. Let's just walk out of here and pretend this never happened. I'll help you fix it, I promise. Just stop. My mother moved in right behind him, her hand landing on my shoulder, but it wasn't a comforting touch. It was a heavy, pressuring weight. Sarah, honey, Jake is right. Look at how worked up you're getting everyone. Is this really the Collins way? To cause a scene in public over a material possession? Her voice took on that sharp, guilt-tripping edge she had perfected over decades. You've always been so lucky with money, Sarah. You can afford to fix this. But you can't afford to lose your family's respect by being this vindictive. Think about how that poor mother feels out there right now, shaking because of you. I looked at her, my mother, who was currently blaming me for the emotional distress of a woman Jake had attacked. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. Because I wouldn't let the lie go, I was the one causing the scene. Because I wanted the truth, I was being UN family-like. The pattern was complete. Jake creates the chaos, and then they use my strength as a weapon against me to force me to clean it up. I turned to my father. Dad? You think I should just drop it? You think I should let $30,000 in damage go because Jake is stressed? My father wouldn't look at me. He was staring at a blank monitor on the far wall, his jaw tight. I just want a quiet Sunday, Sarah, he muttered, his voice weary. I'll write you a check for whatever the insurance doesn't cover. Just, let's not do this here. Let the man go back to his job. He was doing it again, buying peace at the expense of justice. He knew Jake was involved. He wasn't stupid. But he was tired. And in this family, being tired was an excuse to let the truth die. I'm not dropping anything, I said, my voice cold and steady. And I don't want your money, Dad. I want the person who did this to be held accountable by the systems we have in place. I pay for insurance, I pay for security, and I bought a car that protects itself. I pulled out my phone and swiped to the app. I could see the thumbnail of the Sentry Mode clip. It showed a clear, wide-angle view of the driver's side door. I'm about to hit play. Does anyone want to change their story before the 4K video starts? Jake's face went from grey to a flushed, angry purple. You're insane. You're actually obsessed. You care more about this stupid Italian engine than your own flesh and blood. He turned to the security manager, who was watching the family meltdown with an expression of pure awkwardness. She's not in her right mind. Don't let her play that. It's a privacy violation. The security manager cleared his throat. Sir, it's her vehicle. She can view her own footage. Just as I was about to press the button, my phone vibrated with an incoming call from an unknown local number. I knew who it was. I hit speakerphone. Sarah Collins speaking. Sarah, this is Giovanni from the Ferrari Collision Center in Plano. I just got the photos your insurance agent sent over. His voice was grim, that professional tone that tells you exactly how much pain your bank account is about to feel. I've reviewed the depth of the gouge. It's not just the clear coat, Sarah. Whoever did this used a heavy-duty tool, maybe a lug wrench or a thick construction key. They dragged it deep enough to scar the aluminum body panel itself. We can't just paint over this. I felt Jake go still beside me. My mother's grip on my shoulder tightened. What's the number, Giovanni? I asked, looking straight at Jake. To do this right? To strip the door, repair the metal, and do a full factory-spec Rosso Corsa multistage respray so it matches the rest of the car? You're looking at a baseline of $48,000, and that's before we check the sensors in the door handle they might have nicked. With labor and specialized shipping for the paint components from Italy, call it an even $50,000. The silence in the room was absolute. $50,000. That wasn't just a scratch anymore. In the state of Texas, that amount of intentional property damage pushed the crime from a misdemeanor straight into a high-level felony. Jake's eyes went wide, and for the first time, I saw real, unadulterated terror behind his smug mask. He realized this wasn't just a family argument anymore. This was a prison sentence. Sarah, for the love of everything, just stop. Jake's voice cracked, and he actually stomped his foot on the sterile tile floor. He wasn't acting like a protective brother anymore. He was acting like a cornered animal. You're being so weird about this. It's a car. It's just metal and paint. You're standing here in a security office like you're the FBI, and for what? To humiliate some random family? To make mom cry on her weekend? He stepped into my personal space, his breath smelling of the expensive steak I had just paid for. Just drop it. Delete the footage. Let's just walk out of here and pretend this never happened. I'll help you fix it, I promise. Just stop. My mother moved in right behind him, her hand landing on my shoulder, but it wasn't a comforting touch. It was a heavy, pressuring weight. Sarah, honey, Jake is right. Look at how worked up you're getting everyone. Is this really the Collins way? To cause a scene in public over a material possession? Her voice took on that sharp, guilt-tripping edge she had perfected over decades. You've always been so lucky with money, Sarah. You can afford to fix this. But you can't afford to lose your family's respect by being this vindictive. Think about how that poor mother feels out there right now, shaking because of you. I looked at her, my mother, who was currently blaming me for the emotional distress of a woman Jake had attacked. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. Because I wouldn't let the lie go, I was the one causing the scene. Because I wanted the truth, I was being UN family-like. The pattern was complete. Jake creates the chaos, and then they use my strength as a weapon against me to force me to clean it up. I turned to my father. Dad? You think I should just drop it? You think I should let $30,000 in damage go because Jake is stressed? My father wouldn't look at me. He was staring at a blank monitor on the far wall, his jaw tight. I just want a quiet Sunday, Sarah, he muttered, his voice weary. I'll write you a check for whatever the insurance doesn't cover. Just, let's not do this here. Let the man go back to his job. He was doing it again, buying peace at the expense of justice. He knew Jake was involved. He wasn't stupid, but he was tired. And in this family, being tired was an excuse to let the truth die. "I'm not dropping anything," I said, my voice cold and steady. "And I don't want your money, Dad. I want the person who did this to be held accountable by the systems we have in place. I pay for insurance, I pay for security, and I bought a car that protects itself." I pulled out my phone and swiped to the app. I could see the thumbnail of the Sentry Mode clip. It showed a clear, wide-angle view of the driver's side door. I'm about to hit play. Does anyone want to change their story before the 4K video starts? Jake's face went from grey to a flushed, angry purple. "You're insane. You're actually obsessed. You care more about this stupid Italian engine than your own flesh and blood." He turned to the security manager, who was watching the family meltdown with an expression of pure awkwardness. "She's not in her right mind. Don't let her play that. It's a privacy violation." The security manager cleared his throat. "Sir, it's her vehicle. She can view her own footage." Just as I was about to press the button, my phone vibrated with an incoming call from an unknown local number. I knew who it was. I hit speakerphone. Sarah Collins speaking. "Sarah, this is Giovanni from the Ferrari Collision Center in Plano. I just got the photos your insurance agent sent over." His voice was grim, that professional tone that tells you exactly how much pain your bank account is about to feel. "I've reviewed the depth of the gouge. It's not just the clear coat, Sarah. Whoever did this used a heavy-duty tool, maybe a lug wrench or a thick construction key. They dragged it deep enough to scar the aluminum body panel itself. We can't just paint over this." I felt Jake go still beside me. My mother's grip on my shoulder tightened. "What's the number, Giovanni?" I asked, looking straight at Jake. "To do this right? To strip the door, repair the metal, and do a full factory-spec Rosso Corsa multistage respray so it matches the rest of the car? You're looking at a baseline of $48,000, and that's before we check the sensors in the door handle they might have nicked. With labor and specialized shipping for the paint components from Italy, call it an even $50,000. The silence in the room was absolute. $50,000. That wasn't just a scratch anymore. In the state of Texas, that amount of intentional property damage pushed the crime from a misdemeanor straight into a high-level felony. Jake's eyes went wide, and for the first time, I saw real, unadulterated terror behind his smug mask. He realized this wasn't just a family argument anymore. This was a prison sentence. $50,000. My mother's voice went up an octave, sounding like a tea kettle hitting its boiling point. "For a scratch? Sarah, that man on the phone is scamming you. It's a car door, not a gold bar." She was frantic now, her eyes darting between me and the phone as if she could scold the reality out of the situation. But Giovanni wasn't some local mechanic in a grease-stained shirt. He was a factory-certified specialist who handled vehicles worth more than the house Jake was currently living in. Giovanni's voice came through the speaker, calm and professional. "This isn't a Chevy. The Roma uses a specific multi-layer paint process. To fix a deep gouge like this, we have to strip the entire side of the car to ensure the color match is perfect under the Texas sun. Otherwise, in 6 months, that door will look like a different shade of red than the fender. Plus, the aluminum is deformed. We don't use Bondo on a Ferrari. We have to perform specialized metal work or replace the door shell entirely." I looked at Jake. He looked like he was about to vomit. The $50,000 figure had hit him like a physical blow to the stomach. In Texas, anything over $2,500 in intentional damage is a state jail felony. $50,000? That's second-degree felony territory. We weren't talking about a slap on the wrist or a lecture from Dad. We were talking about a years in Huntsville kind of problem. "Sarah, hang up," Jake whispered, his voice trembling. "Just hang up. We can go to a different shop. I know a guy in Garland who can do it for $5,000. $50,000 that's a house deposit. You can't be serious about this." He was begging now, his pride completely evaporated. The heroic brother who was protecting me from a toddler was gone, replaced by a man who realized he had just accidentally dismantled his entire future. My father finally stepped closer to the phone. "Giovanni, this is Robert Collins, Sarah's father. Is there truly no other way? No way to just touch it up?" "Mr. Collins," Giovanni replied, "if Sarah wants her car to retain its resale value and its structural integrity, no. There is no other way. This was a violent, deliberate act. Whoever did this didn't just key the car, They tried to destroy it. I tapped the screen and ended the call. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. The security manager was looking at his shoes, clearly wishing he was anywhere else. My mother turned to me, her face contorted in a mix of fury and desperation. "Sarah, you are not doing this. You are not going to let some insurance company charge $50,000 and ruin our lives. Tell them it was an accident. Tell them you hit a pole." "Mom, I didn't hit a pole," I said, my voice as cold as ice. "And I'm not lying to a multi-billion-dollar insurance corporation. That's insurance fraud, and I'm not going to prison for Jake's jealousy." Just then, my phone chimed. It was an automated text from my insurance carrier, followed by a direct message from my agent. "Sarah, the adjuster has flagged this as a high-value criminal mischief claim. To proceed with the $50,000 coverage, we require the high-definition digital evidence mentioned in your initial report. Please upload the Sentry Mode footage to the secure portal immediately so we can subrogate against the perpetrator." The word perpetrator hung in the air like a death sentence. My agent wasn't just asking for the video to be nice. They needed it to go after the person who did this to get their $50,000 back. If I didn't provide it, the claim would be denied, and I'd be out $50,000. If I did provide it, the insurance company's legal team would descend on Jake like a pack of wolves. Jake saw the text over my shoulder. He let out a low, whimpering sound. "Sarah, please. If you upload that, I'm done. They'll come for me. The police will come for me." My mother grabbed my wrist, her nails digging into my skin. "Sarah Collins, you delete that video right now. I am your mother, and I am telling you to protect your brother." I looked at her, then at the upload button glowing on my screen. "I'm not deleting anything, Mom," I said, my voice cutting through the room like a cold front. I turned my phone toward them, the screen glowing with the 4K thumbnail. "You all keep talking about family and accidents. Let's see what the car has to say about our family values." I hit play. The footage wasn't just clear, it was haunting. Because Ferrari Sentry cameras are mounted at waist height with ultra-wide lenses, there was no glare and no bad angles. The video started with our family walking away. We saw my father leading, my mother following, and me walking beside her. Then, there was Jake. He lingered. He looked left, then right, his eyes darting around the North Dallas lot with a calculated, nervous energy. The shoe-tying lie disintegrated in an instant. On the screen, Jake didn't bend down. He didn't adjust a lace. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a heavy, steel construction key. He stepped flush against the driver's side door, his face coming into crystal-clear focus. You could see the sweat on his forehead, the bitter sneer on his lips, and the pure, unadulterated jealousy in his eyes. Then came the sound. The external microphones picked up the stomach-turning asterisk screech asterisk of steel tearing through 5 layers of premium Italian paint. Jake pressed his entire body weight into it, dragging the key from the front fender all the way to the rear. It was a slow, methodical destruction. When he reached the end, he checked his reflection in my window, tucked the key away, and jogged toward us with that fake, helpful smile. My mother's hand dropped from my wrist as if she'd been burned. She stared at the screen, the excuses finally dying in her throat. My father closed his eyes and leaned his head against the wall, a broken man. Jake was hyperventilating, his voice a pathetic whine. Sarah, I was just frustrated. You have everything and I have nothing." The security manager didn't even look at him. He was already picking up his desk phone. "This isn't a dispute, kid. This is a felony." He looked at me. "Ms. Collins, I'm required to notify the Dallas Police Department immediately." Outside, the faint, unmistakable wail of a siren cut through the Texas heat. The siren stopped outside the mall entrance, and 2 Dallas PD officers walked into the security office, their heavy boots thudding on the tile. The heat from the lot followed them in, but the room felt like a freezer. "We got a call about high-value property damage," the lead officer said, his eyes scanning the $50,000 estimate and the Ferrari on the monitors. The security manager pointed to the 4K footage of Jake's sneer. "It's all here, officer. Intentional vandalism. Suspect is right there." Jake scrambled to his feet, hands shaking. "Officer, wait. This is my sister. It was a prank, a joke. Sarah, tell them you're not pressing charges." He looked at me with wild, pleading eyes, expecting the big sister shield to protect him one last time. My mother rushed forward, her voice frantic. "Officer, please. This is a private family matter. We will pay for the car. Just don't do this." The officer didn't budge. $50,000 is a second-degree felony in Texas. And trying to pin it on a stranger with a child? That's filing a false report. He turned to me. "Miss Collins, if you don't file this report, your insurance will deny the claim for fraud. Do you wish to proceed?" The word fraud hit the room like a lightning bolt. If I lied for Jake, I was risking my company and my freedom for a brother who just tried to destroy me. I looked at Jake. He didn't look like family. He looked like a liability. "Yes," I said, my voice firm. "I'm filing the report. Let the law take its course." "Sarah, no," my mother screamed. But the officer was already moving. "Hands behind your back, son." The metallic click of the handcuffs was the most honest sound I'd ever heard. As they led a sobbing Jake out past the luxury shops, his successful reputation shattered. People were filming. The Collins way was over. My mother turned to me, eyes full of hate. "You put your brother in a cage over a car. You've lost your family, Sarah." 2 days later, the Collins family PR machine was in full overdrive, but the power had shifted for the first time in 30 years. I was sitting in my home office in North Dallas when the phone rang. It was a collect call from the county jail. I picked up. "Sarah? Sarah, it's me." Jake's voice sounded thin, stripped of the unearned swagger he'd carried since high school. There was no "hey, sis," or "I'm sorry." Instead, it was, "You have to get me out of here. The bail is set at $10,000, and Dad says his accounts are frozen because of some audit. You have the cash. Just pay it, and I'll pay you back. I'm sorry I touched the car, okay? It was a mistake. I was just having a bad day." A bad day. That's what he called a $50,000 felony and a deliberate attempt to ruin a stranger's life. I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the Texas sunset, feeling a strange, cold calm. "Jake, you didn't have a bad day. You had a moment of truth. You showed everyone who you really are when nobody is looking. Except, the car was looking." "Don't be like that," he snapped, his true colors leaking through the fake apology. "Mom is a wreck. She's telling everyone you're doing this out of spite because you're jealous of my potential. Just drop the charges, tell the insurance it was an accident, and let's go back to normal." "Normal is dead, Jake," I said, my voice steady. "Normal was me paying for your mistakes while you mocked my hard work. I'm not paying your bail, and I'm definitely not committing insurance fraud for you. You're finally going to experience what I've lived with for 15 years, consequences." I hung up. Within minutes, my mother was calling, hysterical. "How can you be so heartless? He's your brother. He's apologized. What more do you want? Do you want him to rot in a cell over some Italian metal?" "I want him to grow up, Mom," I replied. "And if rotting is what it takes for him to realize he's not the center of the universe, then so be it." I realized then that they didn't want my forgiveness, they wanted my silence. But the legal wheels were already turning. The insurance company had already received the 4K footage, and the district attorney was looking at a slam dunk case. The legal system in Texas doesn't move fast, but it moves with the weight of a freight train. 6 months later, the dust finally settled, and the landscape of the Collins family was unrecognizable. My insurance company didn't play games. They used the 4K footage to sue Jake for every penny of the $$50,000 repair bill. Since he had no assets, they went after his future earnings and the startup fund my parents had hidden away. Jake avoided prison time through a plea deal, but he didn't walk away clean. He was sentenced to 5 years of felony probation and 500 hours of community service. Ironically, cleaning graffiti and picking up trash along the same highways my logistics trucks travel every day. His reputation in our social circle was incinerated. No one wanted to invest in a man who keys his own sister's car out of spite. The tension at home was a thick, suffocating fog. I stopped attending Sunday dinners. My mother couldn't look at me without weeping about family loyalty, and my father just became a ghost, retreating into his work to avoid the crossfire. They blamed me for Jake's ruined life, ignoring the fact that Jake was the one who held the key. I finally got my Ferrari back, the paint shimmering and flawless, but every time I sat in it, I felt the distance I had put between myself and the people who were supposed to love me. One evening, my father called. His voice was different, no longer weary, just defeated. "Sarah," he said quietly, "your mother and I are selling the big house. We're moving into a smaller condo in Plano. We can't afford the upkeep anymore after paying for Jake's legal team and the insurance settlements." I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it down. "I'm sorry to hear that, Dad." "There's one more thing," he whispered, and I could hear my mother sobbing in the background. He's struggling to find work with a felony on his record. Your mother wants to know if you'll hire him at your warehouse, just as a driver or a loader. She says it's the only way we can ever be a family again." I looked at my reflection in the window, a self-made woman who had finally learned that blood isn't always thicker than water. Sometimes, it's just more expensive. I stood in my office, the silence of the building echoing the space I had cleared in my own life. My father was still on the other end of the line, waiting for me to say the magic words that would bring the old Jake back into the fold. He wanted me to provide a paycheck, a title, and a fresh start for the man who had tried to bury me in a lie. "His family, Sarah," my father pushed, his voice cracking. "Doesn't that mean anything anymore?" I looked down at the keys to my Ferrari sitting on my desk. I thought about the 4K footage of Jake's face. I thought about the mother who tried to make me a criminal to save her favorite child. The Collins way had always been about sacrifice, specifically, my sacrifice to fuel their delusions. "No, Dad," I said, my voice as flat as a desert road. "I'm not hiring him. I don't run a daycare for felons, and I don't employ people I can't trust with a piece of metal, let alone my business. If he needs a job, he can apply elsewhere like a stranger. Because that's what we are now." "You're really going to let him starve?" My mother's voice shrieked in the background, having grabbed the extension. "After everything we gave you?" "You gave me the drive to leave," I replied. "And I've officially arrived." I hung up the phone. I didn't block their numbers, but I didn't save them either. I walked out to the parking lot, the evening air finally cooling. I climbed into my car, the engine roaring to life with a precision that my family could never understand. There was no grand speech, no tearful reunion, and no dramatic forgiveness. There was only the road ahead and the quiet peace of a life no longer burdened by the weight of people who only loved me when I was useful. I realized then that some bridges aren't meant to be crossed again, they are meant to be burned so you can see your way forward. I chose the dignity of my own solitude over the poison of a dishonest home.